Greetings, people of the internet. This is your original angster, representing a podcast that has no name and may not ever exist. Gum, how unprofessional. Citizens of the internet, I am going to attempt a podcast. This is something that I have tossed around in my head for some time. A few years ago, I got really into Last Podcast on the Left while doing research for a novel that I hope to write that takes place during the... Now, being mistaken for a boy didn't bother me at all. Or I guess maybe in the beginning, but it just happened everywhere. At the doctor's office, at, with kids that I hadn't met, on the playground, with adults, with kids who didn't know me at my school. One time I really had to pee and I was running into the bathroom and a girl who was passing by just yelled, "You're a boy!" I'm like, no, I'm not. I gotta pee. Oh my gosh, wow. I've been trying to figure out which bathroom to use for a very long time, I guess. Right? I'm not sure. So I do remember there was one time that I introduced myself to a kid on the playground as Max, and I really liked that. It felt like such a relief somehow. I guess maybe I didn't feel the need to... Well, actually, they hadn't mistaken me for a boy. I just was Max in that moment. And I don't know how much that had to do with my gender identity, the way that it developed. I imagine, though, that a more common reaction to that might be to really lean into femininity, but I wanted nothing to do with it, ever. I didn't play with dolls. I played with stuffed animals. Very elaborately. The plots were, vast. Anyway, yeah, no, we'll just pause for a second. So I wasn't troubled about the gender thing for most of my childhood. What did trouble me was the degree of social isolation that I lived in. Again, nonverbal learning disability, and what that generally means is I can't really read body language very well. I can't really pick up on a lot of nonverbal social cues. It's hard for me to figure out when somebody is being sarcastic sometimes, and I frequently answer sarcastic or rhetorical questions, just not realizing that that's what they are. And tone can be difficult. So that was my first stumbling block. The second was that my family moved into this one neighborhood in Sleepy Hollow when I was about 6, and there was a pack of 8 to 12, depending on the day, boys, all my age, who had all known each other since they were very little. So they had a very, they would just roam around the neighborhood, which was very safe. And most, if not all of them, were in, if not the challenge class for the gifted track, then at least in outreach, which was sort of like a step down from challenge, but a step above everything. It was weird just how much attention was put into that. And I was put in challenge. Right? Yeah, obviously. But, well, I was put in challenge, and, I lived in the same neighborhood as these kids, so when we were very young, 6, 7, I would hang out with them. I was on the bottom of the totem pole. More, I think, because I was new than because I was a girl, but the girl thing did not help. And I didn't notice too much until the boy who I considered to be my best friend, and we wanted to have a sleepover. Or I wanted to have a sleepover, at least. And it just did not occur to me that it would not be okay. So, but then, my mom and his mom talked, and they were like, no, you can't have a sleepover with a boy. You're not a boy. Like, as though either of us were capable of any kind of sexual goings on. Regardless, that sort of, I believe that sent him at least the message that you shouldn't be hanging out with me. And that was either exacerbated or even eclipsed by the way that I handled this was not great. I started just mercilessly bullying this poor kid. And he was very sensitive as it was. Like, it was very held up attacky of, hey Arnold, you know? Not as conniving, but just like, I bullied him because I clearly couldn't be his friend. And I still wanted to interact, I guess. And nonverbal learning disability. I had friends growing up who were girls, one of whom was 157% on the spectrum with me. And she was cis, you know, or I think so. I think that she still goes by she, her. Although we're not in contact. We had a very tumultuous friendship. It was very, like, honestly, I think that our parents were both grateful that we had each other to just spat with and be emotional, and we were way too intense for young children. I started writing spells when I was like 7 or 8, and she and I, we decided we were in a coven. We started a coven, and she was also, you know, extraordinarily intelligent. I believe far more than I was, at least innately. And just a fascinating young person. We both were gender fucked, not wanting to be a girl. And I was upset that it's like, oh, you want to be a girl? It's just, that's okay. It's okay that she's a girl. Oh, yikes. And, like, by the time I hit middle school, I had no friends. However, I don't know what happened to M. She was still in school, but I think probably she had a better time socially. The other girl I was friends with had completely stopped talking to me. All of the guys, including the 3 who kept being my friends after the whole girls are icky thing, all stopped talking to me because I was obsessed with getting a boyfriend. Or not even getting a boyfriend. I felt compelled to not even flirt. I didn't know how. But to be around. It was like my borderline mind was like trying to fixate on a person for its first obsession. And in my first year at the middle and high school, I found one who was a guy from out of town. So, this was also the first year that it was Instant Messenger's first year, or it was just the first year that my family had a computer with access to it, something like that. And this was back in the, like, that's the internet dial-up noise. But, so, being in social situations in person was like, I might as well just stand there with a bag over my head as far as picking up on things. But Instant Messenger was pure words. It was only words. There was nothing for me to get wrong. So suddenly I was having conversations with people, just like anybody who was online that I knew. And the person who I sought out the most was, I don't know, Jim. Hold on, what the fuck? And I hadn't really, depression wasn't on my radar until there was like, I don't know what it was, some extracurricular thing. It was like a depression awareness thing. And like there were just like flyers on like what to look for in a depressed person. And like warning signs and stuff like that. And I was struck that every single one applied to me so much. I hadn't felt like happy or had like a good time in years. Except maybe when I was like reading books or doing shit by myself. Fucking. And I saw this shit and I was like, you know what? I think I need some help. I finally have a name to put to this, and apparently these people need help a lot. But I wasn't raised by emotionally available or mature people. Emotions were kind of verboten in my family, in that. So what I ended up doing, and this makes me sad, I wrote like a letter, just saying like, just talking about how I felt, just talking about how lonely I was and how I was failing math, and that was a big deal because I was on the gifted track. I didn't have, I think I probably mentioned this, I didn't have any friends. I was obsessed with a guy who did not want anything to do with me beyond sort of half-heartedly putting up with the conversations when I would hound him on Instant Messenger. And he was very gracious for a long time about that. But, like, all that I would talk about, I did have some acquaintances who I would eat lunch with who were older than me, but all that I would talk about was how much I wanted to die and how I hated my life. And that was pretty much all I had to say. So I wasn't a blast to be around. I had not discovered my indomitable wit. And so I wrote this letter. I don't remember anything about what it said, except that I folded it up, wrote, "Help me," on the top, on the folded piece of paper, and I left it on the floor in a classroom. Somebody found it. Somebody called me to the office, which was what I was hoping for, of course. And I guess that's probably how I started seeing the therapist who started treating me for borderline personality disorder starting when I was like 14, 15. It was that obvious that early, is what I'm saying. Not that she shouldn't have done that. It was very good that she did. So, started doing that. I was just so resistant I had built up a lot of my dad's defenses, I think, where resistant to talk about emotion, and this idea that to be emotional was to display weakness and was sort of to lose. She was a wonderful woman, and I think she helped me, but like I really don't think there was much anybody could do at that time. And people tried. One of the things that happened was I begged to go to a different school. So what? They sent me to a different school. They found my dad could afford it. They found a private school that was very small, that largely catered to children of like actors, musicians, and a lot of famous people. Bill Irwin's kid went there. The guy, I don't know if any of you know, the keyboardist from Dream Theater had a kid there, and they both gave performances. So, the theater aspect of this place was really, really great. Their performances kids would regularly win awards, like countywide awards for their performances. So that was cool. And I was able to play Kate Keller in Miracle Worker, and then I was able to play Richard Henry Lee in 1776. And that felt so right. Being a guy. Now, this was not the social upgrade that I originally believed it would be. Long story short, I was in a class of like 16 people, and 8 or 9 of them were girls who had all been going to the school and all been very good friends since they were extremely young, just sort of like the pack of boys. They knew that I wasn't one of them, just like most girls did at that time. And I was a very easy target for like bullying. They didn't know me, and I think that I distracted them from like digging into each other because they would do that. And I you know, I wasn't gonna bully anybody back. It's not like I could, really. So, man, I don't want to get into everything that they did, but, like, for instance, one time they chased me into a bathroom and I hid in a stall, and, like, two girls got in the adjacent stalls and, like, climbed on top of the toilet to, like, look at me, and the rest were just shaking the stall. Eventually, no, what actually, what happened was, I did have one friend, another person who I believed to be on the spectrum, and she told me that I should go to this arts camp with her that summer. I did. I lost a bunch of weight. Finally, like, my weight distributed the way that it was gonna stay. You know, big tits, itty bitty waist. Not much in the way of an ass, but decent legs. And suddenly, not only did I look like a girl, but, like, everybody seemed to notice. And all of a sudden, all of the guys who went to the school who I'd always wanted to be friends with, but who would sort of ignore me, or who I didn't think I was, like, I didn't think I had a chance just to even be friends with them. Suddenly, a lot of them wanted to not hang out, but, like, were very interested in talking to me. And I think I was I think I understood what was going on. I wasn't blind to it. I definitely didn't think, like, oh, all of a sudden I must have become so much more interesting. That's not what happened. Another thing that happened while I was at arts camp was I got my first boyfriend, which really boosted my confidence, and I cut myself for the first time. Psychiatrist, and it was sort of a long time coming in that this was the height, or no, it was, I guess, the whole big pharma, like, paying doctors to prescribe medications to children had just become en vogue. Like, all of the wealthy people's kids were on drugs. Legal prescribed drugs, yeah. So I saw a psychiatrist who, after 20 minutes, prescribed me Effexor. And Effexor is no longer prescribed to adolescents because it dramatically increases suicidal ideation and increases the risk of suicide by quite a bit. No, we didn't know that. I mean, like, honestly, I might have been one of the people they found out about that for. So I had stopped cutting myself at that point. But once I started taking Effexor, I no longer needed to eat or sleep. And I was just manic, basically. Or I was suicidal. There was really no in between. It was sort of a rapid cycling thing. But, like, it was, each extreme was so much more extreme than it had been before. And I immediately started cutting myself again, just to fucking cope. I was not okay. And I had started cutting myself, like, under the desk at school, bringing a razor to school. And that went on for a while until I was caught, because I had to be taken to the ER. Then after I got stabilized, I went for a couple years to a public school near us that had a gifted handicap program. And that was great. I had a decent amount of, like, people who liked Warhammer and Tolkien and nerds. I was friends with a gaggle of guys who were nerds. And it was like I finally sort of fit in somewhere. And that was cool. Two of them, never mind, I'll get to that fucking later. That is not for today. It wasn't unusual that all of my friends were guys. But, I mean, I had stopped thinking about, oh, fuck. God damn it, I keep forgetting about this. Fucking backtrack, please. Because there was something important that happened when I was, like, 11 or 12. I didn't have the language to describe how I felt. But I told my parents that I would no longer respond to my birth name, Deirdre. Which, like, I get if I had, like, chosen a name like Kevin, you know, or Adam, or Luke. But, I refuse to answer to any other name than Orlando. which was objectively funny. I was a kind of chubby, like, little kid. And calling me Orlando was just absurd to my parents. They didn't know what trans meant or what it was. They, like, one of the ways that I tried to describe it was actually, I went to my mom one time and was like, Mom, I think I'm a lesbian. She had some lesbian friends. And my mom immediately was like, you're not a lesbian, you're 12. And it was kind of like taken with good humor, but like the good humor was like laughing at me. So I put that away. And then once I was done on the other side of puberty, I felt that was infinitely preferable, the way that I was treated after puberty than before, when nobody would ever talk to me. So I really, and I still struggle with this, my like sense of self and my self-worth is very, very tied to my appearance and to being aesthetically pleasing to people. And much less now than when I was like a teen, but also sexual. That is another story. So, went to that program. Things got worse. They always did. Was on oh, well, that's another time. Got sent to a wilderness program. It was awful, but like nothing really gender related. Then I went to a therapeutic boarding school for the rest of my high school years. And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Because although I had already been diagnosed with a nonverbal learning disability, when they told my parents, my dad laughed at the lady and was just like, so she's too smart for her own good, and we never spoke of it again. So I don't think that they knew that I was on the spectrum. But they did know that I had no social skills. And I had these poorly assimilated tactics based on what I thought my mom would do. And that just made me seem very disingenuous. So, like, and also I was hiding behind my intelligence, which obviously there are so many different kinds, but I was at that time unable to even acknowledge types of intelligence that I didn't have as valid. Like, I was more like, math isn't important. Like, I don't, and that would make me feel safe, so I wouldn't have to admit to myself that I needed to work harder at stuff, because I had this very inflated sense of innate intelligence, which is very common in gifted kids. Anyway, my therapist, who was homophobic, I don't know if she even knew what trans people were, but to her credit, at one point she was like, look, you're smarter than me. Whoop-de-doo. Look where that got you. One of us is here because we're good at what we do, and one of us is here because we're not. You have to learn social skills. You have to learn to get along with people, or else you're never getting out of here. So, I had to really overhaul a lot of my prior thinking. Anyway, But what was hardest about it was that because we were all teenagers and most of us were horny as shit, there was almost no interaction between girls and guys, especially during the, like, you had to, like, level up, basically, to get privileges like being able to talk to guys socially, or being able to wear jewelry, shit like that. So it was like, it was really, I didn't, again, this was very under my radar, but it really did, the girls knew I wasn't one of them. I knew I wasn't one of them. And I got along much better with the guys when I could talk to them. And I ended up making a lot of very good male friends. I got close with a couple of the girls who I lived with, but that didn't really last. So, but that didn't give me any insight about the gender shit. Graduated, went to Marlborough College, which is one of the most liberal art colleges I have ever experienced. A very small school, like 490 students, 95% dropout rate. I don't know why I went there. It was, my parents paid for it, so not my choice really. And genderfuckery was normal there. And that was, I think, kind of the first time I had been in a situation where it was socially acceptable to be sort of gender fucked. So, I experimented with dapper looks and stuff like that, but at that time in my life, still my main focus was relationships. And I knew that I liked men. And I knew that men liked these. And I did not know whether men would continue to be attracted to me I hadn't even thought about it, God, honestly. At some point during this time, my mom's ex came out as a woman and started transitioning when she was in her 60s, which I'm hoping to interview her about it. But so that sort of, I think that might have put it back in my brain. Got really super traumatized, just ran from dealing with that for a very long time. Towards the end of that time, I did come out to a group of my friends when I was living in New Paltz, and the reaction was really negative, which was odd to me because there was a trans woman in that social circle. She wasn't there at the time, but I sort of thought that they would be supportive. One girl who I considered my best friend, later found out not so much, was said that I'd make an ugly guy. And my best friend there, Dana, threatened to murder me if I ever did anything to my tits. Which was a joke, but still, I internalized it. I dated a guy for a little while who, I wasn't good in that relationship, but he would call me Kurt a lot. And that sort of became the name that I would think of myself as. Then, yes. Coming up to, finally, that was 2014. Now we are back to 2016 when my family and I moved down here. Once I decided that I wasn't going to kill myself to avoid going to Virginia, and once I was here, I noticed the gender divide was much more noticeable. I was treated like a lady, even despite what I look like and how I behave. And it's just the social expectations of a woman down south are different and more. And that's another reason that I decided, fuck it, I'm gonna come out. So I did. I first, and that was a very polarizing experience for the people who I had become friends with. There was a couple who I had become very close with, and especially their son, but these two, who they ran the local goth night. They had hired me to body paint. I really wanted to be close with them. I really wanted to be part of that family almost. But then I came out and that didn't happen. They would make transphobic posts on their Facebook. There was one time that, oh my God, the wife, there was some comment thread that I was a part of, and the wife got involved being like, I knew Luke before they were Luke, so I think I know, it's just very shitty, and they stopped talking to me. So that was too bad. But another pair of friends that I had were very receptive and very, very supportive, and really. And then I met somebody who I dated for a while who was also very supportive, really, called me a man all the time, and So when I came out, I was afraid to medically or even socially transition all the way. Largely because I am, as you may remember me mentioning, egregiously mentally ill. And I had heard a lot about testosterone, specifically, giving people rages and causing mood instability and just that it could be very destabilizing. And I was like, well, if it's destabilizing for anybody, it's going to be destabilizing for me. So, I came out in 2017, but it was not until this past summer of 2023 that I decided to go on testosterone. In between times, since coming out, I have met the love of my life, who I've been with for 5 years. I went back to school. I started a business, which is thriving. I calmed right the fuck down. I had not expected that at all. I attained a level of emotional and mental stability that I had never imagined having. And so once I had been stable, another thing was I started getting really, really bad back, neck, and shoulder pain about 2 years ago. And it took me a while, but I finally put 2 and 2 together and was like, is it these? Are my 34 triple D tits giving me back pain? And if the answer is yes, then I might be able to get my insurance to cover top surgery, which would be cool. However, since then, I don't know if top surgery is going to happen, but I have been taking testosterone for a little over a month now, and that was its own thing where I really didn't pay very much attention to the instructions. I insisted on doing the intramuscular injections because I thought it was more hardcore. And to me, I felt more manly giving myself injections in my ass with a 2.5-inch needle 3 times a week than just putting some gel on me. Anyway, I had just sort of assumed that one vial, which is, this big, 200 milligrams each vial, was one dose. I later found out that while each vial contained 200 milligrams of testosterone, a dose was 3 milliliters/milligrams. So I was taking 75 times more testosterone than I should have been. Fortunately, the effects of testosterone are cumulative, and it takes quite a while to notice any changes. Also, I don't think that the body can really absorb that much testosterone at once, and I think I probably just pissed it all out. So, as far as testosterone changes, the only thing that I've noticed is a slight drop in my voice, especially when I sing. I love that, and it's fine with me that it's going to be permanent. So, anyway, I wanted to keep this under an hour because when I recorded this same episode 2 days ago, it was just about an hour, a little bit over, and it didn't save. And I really don't know why, but I'm trying to hedge my bets. So, I don't even know if I'm going to continue taking testosterone. I feel like I'm going to get to a certain point with the permanent changes where I feel non-binary and androgynous enough, and they'll stop. I don't know if I'll ever get top surgery, or if it's going to ever be an option. I don't want a dick. This is a mistake that a therapist once made. I don't want a penis. This is not a Freudian situation, just in case y'all... So what I'm saying is I don't want bottom surgery at all. I love my vagina. It does wonders for me. And so yeah, that's about it. I plan to do another episode where I interview this woman who came out as a woman in her 60s and her transition experience. Maybe there are a few other trans people who I would like to interview if they're up for it. Anyway, it's been lovely chatting with you, and if you stayed the whole time, why? But seriously, thank you, bless you. I would love to know y'all's gender experience. So feel free to tell me in the comments. All right, citizens of the internet, it's been a pleasure. And okay, I love you. Bye.